Greetings, my fellow gamers, it is I, the Mindlessobserer. I have returned to you with another gaming Let's Play. What are we playing, you might ask of me. Frankly, we are playing Let Us Not Get Caught by the Eye of Sauron. And what, pray tell, is the Eye of Sauron? Well, my friends, Sauron is the fallen Maiar of the Valar Ol. Sauron, as we know, absolutely hated how chaotic the world was, and so he rebelled against God by trying to impose his own vision of order. Sauron wanted a world of perfect order, perfect belief, perfect obedience, all in the service of himself. Now, if we're to look at all these things within the extremely autistic context of themes and symbols, then we can definitively say that Sauron's great eye was a metaphor for the panopticon of the state and society, forces backed by a malevolent will that does what it does for the very best of intentions. More to the point, have you read the terms of service for your gaming consoles, my friends? You see, when you sign up to any gaming service, be it Steam, Epic, PlayStation Network, or Xbox Live, you thereby sign a legally binding contract. Yet, have any of you ever actually read this contract? No, of course not, you silly twats. You just press a button and accept like the potato you are. Behold then an example of the terms of services within the PlayStation Network. And as we can clearly see here, if you are younger than 18 years or have not yet reached the legal age of majority in the country in which your account is registered, your parent or legal guardian must create an account for you and agree to these terms of service in order for you to use the PlayStation Network. Before you even begin to use your account, you must ask your parent or guardian to explain these terms to you. This means that if you are underage, you immediately void the agreement, surrender all your legal rights, and potentially open your parents up to legal liability. Are you still pressing accept? Forgive me for a moment as I read and summarily translate the legalese. PSN services include PlayStation Network, PlayStation Store, PlayStation Plus, PlayStation Video, PlayStation Direct, and those websites, products, and services that Sony Interactive Entertainment and its affiliates offer through or in connection with PSN or your account. They may also provide access, paid or unpaid, to content, products, or services offered by publishers or entities other than Sony Interactive Entertainment and its affiliates' third-party services. When you use PSN or your account to access third-party services, the applicable terms of this agreement and any applicable usage terms will govern your use of that service. Any such third-party services may also require you to accept additional and separate terms and conditions that govern your use of those third-party services, third-party terms. Any violation by you of such third-party terms may also be deemed a violation of these terms. PSN content, capital C, includes the games, music, movies, services, including PSN services and third-party services, virtual currency, vouchers, virtual communities, and other digital products or content through PSN. Availability of PSN, its features, and its capital C content varies depending on which PlayStation device or other device you are using to access PSN and is subject to change at any time. Some PSN, capital C, content and features may not be available or supported in your country or language. Additional purchases may be required to access certain PSN, capital C, content or features. Sony Interactive Entertainment does not endorse third-party services promoted or marketed on PSN or through PSN, capital C, content. What an obnoxious bunch of gobbledygook. And what does this all mean, you may be wondering to yourself? Quite simply, by agreeing to the terms of service, PSN will whore you out to third parties for cash, and you have no say in the matter. In addition, these third parties may require you to accept even further binding agreements. Moreover, PSN accepts no legal liability. Are you still so eager to press accept, my friends? But it gets better, so bear with me as I proceed further into the legalese. All information provided during account creation and during the use of your account must be accurate and complete. We reserve the right to suspend, terminate, or restrict any account, including as stated in Section 12.2 of this agreement, that uses or was created using false information, or that we determine was created or used for a purpose that violates this agreement. During account creation, you must select the country or region of your residence and in which your account will be registered in. Once your account is created, you will not be able to change the country or region code associated with your account. Sony Interactive Entertainment has the right to deny the creation of any account for any reason in its sole discretion. We may request identifying documentation or information from you as part of your account creation, or at any time thereafter, in order for you to create an account, or for us to provide certain offerings, functionality or features to you. If we have a reasonable suspicion of fraud, illegal activity, that your account may have been compromised, or that you or your account is in violation of these terms, to avoid harm to Sony, its affiliates, licensors or players, or as may be required by law, we reserve the right to suspend, terminate or restrict your account and PlayStation device and your participation in or access to offerings, functionality or features if you do not provide such documentation or information, or based on our review of such documentation and information. All this is to say that if you fail to fully dox yourself to Sony, your pact is null and void. Also, Sony can just terminate your account for any reason or no reason. Anyway, press the accept button and just ignore everything else, am I right? Then there's the PSN Code of Conduct. You and your family members must follow our Code of Conduct in all dealings with us and other members of the PSN community. Read this carefully and help us keep PSN the best place to play for everyone. By Jove, the utter nerve of these people. Indeed, the archdevil Sony doth demand that you accept a pact that binds you in blood with your family. By accepting the agreement, you acknowledge legal responsibility by blood and agree to accept any crimes committed by your family as if they are your own. So go ahead, my friends, accept those terms and services. Why not? On top of all the rest of this ridiculous nonsense, the Code of Conduct requires you to, quote, be inclusive. What the devil does that mean? PSN is for everyone, regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, nationality, color, immigration status, social and economic class, educational level, shape and size, family status, political belief, religion, and mental and physical ability, or any other attribute that people use to label others or divide communities. What people, Sony? Be specific. This is a legal document. Be specific as to the people who are allegedly using attributes to use to label others or divide communities. Being vague about it means it could be anyone. Regardless, being a good person is never in question. Yet, even following this, the COC gives you a list of common-sense patterns of behavior to follow. As if any of the following do-nots weren't obvious manners of civil conduct already. Why is Sony trying to be the arbiter of my morality? If anyone has not been raised to be a proper functional human being in society already via the natural course of their upbringing, I very much doubt reading the COC on the back of some corporate product will fundamentally change anything about their behaviors. Yet, the real reason Sony is instructing you as to your moral behavior is the demand for compliance. You and your family must comply to the will of the almighty Sauron. Anything other than stellar human behavior is not to be tolerated, and if you or anyone associated with you violates this unholy covenant, your account is voided. And so, I say again, does that accept button look far less tantalizing than it did before? Now, if we continue to scroll downward farther into the terms of service, we can read more about PSN's virtual wallet, which can store funds from an outside payment method, such as credit cards or PayPal, or from vouchers or prepaid card redemptions. Anyway, the only reason this part is worth bringing up is to make it clear that any money you place in this virtual wallet does not actually belong to you anymore. It belongs to Sony and Sony alone. Moreover, even after buying a product, you don't actually own it. In fact, you have surrendered all property rights to anything purchased on PSN, and give PlayStation an unlimited license to dispense with your money and any licenses you purchase as they see fit. If you don't believe me, just scroll further downward and you run across details about content license and restrictions. Bear with me yet again. All intellectual property rights subsisting in PSN content, including all software, data, services, and other content subsisting in or used in connection with PSN. The online ID and access to content and hardware used in connection with PSN belong to Sony Interactive Entertainment, its affiliates, and its licensors. Use of the terms own, ownership, purchase, sale, sold, sell, rent, or buy in this agreement or in connection with PSN content does not mean or imply any transfer of ownership of any content, data or software, or any intellectual property rights from Sony Interactive Entertainment, its affiliates, or its licensors to any user or third party. There's more details about what all this means, But the gist of it is, as I said, you own nothing and Sony owns everything. In this manner, you haven't actually purchased the game. What you have is but the ability to play the game for as long a period of time as Sony deems you worthy. You own nothing. You give Sony money and Sony gives you access. There is no transfer of ownership, no rights are surrendered. All you get is access, not property. You are the pay pig. They are the butcher. Once again, my friends, are you so eager to press accept? Next, we address the binding individual arbitration, which goes on far too long and will leave me far too winded to address in full. So I'll settle with telling you that in the unfortunate event that you foolishly assume you possess any rights under the law, Sony will also require that you voluntarily agree to surrender those rights. Again, click that accept button, just press it and don't ask any questions. Finally, we come to the governing law and jurisdiction, the laws of the state of California, without regard to conflict of law rules, govern this agreement and any dispute between you and the Sony entities. Any dispute not subject to arbitration and yada yada yada. What this means is, if, by some miracle, you convince some idiot judge that you have rights, you agree that your rights will be vindicated under the law of the state of California in the County Court of San Mateo, where Sony America is headquartered, no matter where in the world you happen to be. Now, the point of this entire video, if it wasn't clear already, an entire system has been built within the gaming industry that not only denies you ownership of what you pay for, but also forces you into binding legal agreements that strip you of your rights, not just of property, but also of speech. What really needs to be understood here is that these agreements provide Sony with an unlimited, unrestricted ban on any and all behavior they deem to be divergent. And yes, everyone knows this will include engaging in political wrongthink. You're a fool if you think they won't do this. You'll say something absolutely innocuous one day, and then next day, you find your account has been seized under vague pretenses, accessibility revoked. Have a nice day. And if you think this is just Sony doing this, think again. Valve and Microsoft have similar safeguards in place. What then is the solution, you might ask? Simply not agreeing to the terms of service? Sure, you can refuse to agree, but that inevitably comes at the cost of not being able to play your video games. And God forbid man be bereft of his video games. So really, are you going to finally refuse your addictive tendencies and say no? Will you actually refuse to buy, e.g., purchase a non-exclusive licensed access to the next greatest video game of all time because the market hype told you so? No, of course you won't, because you've been buck-broken. I shall wager most people never even bother to read the terms of service and just click away. However, it might do you some good to be aware of yourself, hence why I'm even talking about this in the first place. For if you apply any amount of security and well-being to anything else you do in life, why not also apply the same to your gaming accounts? Lest the Eye of Sauron descend upon you for compromising something you've sunk hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into. Now, after saying all this, I should be bothered to tell you what I believe this is inevitably leading up to. You see, getting you to agree to an onerous terms of service was simply the first step in a much greater scheme. Now that many people have become far more comfortable with not actually owning their games and instead purchasing a license to play their games, the other shoe is now free to drop. That other shoe will be a far more overt moderation and will also include voice recordings. Make absolutely no mistake when I say you should treat your environment as if anything you say and or type online is being recorded. Anything you say or type into Discord, Steam, PSN or Xbox Live may come back around and bite you in the arse. After all, you accepted the terms of service which entails these companies can monitor you and your data without restrictions and moderate as they please. Inevitably, you as an individual will be rated and monitored by these corporations for what you say or do online. What we're looking at is the workings of some kind of localized social credit system within a persistent monitoring program. And yes, this will record voice and chat communications for later review. Remember all those telephone conversations that tell you the call is being monitored and recorded? Yes, it'll be the same for video games. So, I want you to imagine you're 16 years of age and you're chatting casually with your online friends. And all of a sudden, for whatever reasons, you say, "It's okay to be white." You think nothing of it, of course, and continue on with your life. Then imagine being that same kid, only you're now in your mid to late 20s and you decide you want to run for political office. But here comes some Sony lobbyist with your social credit record, and even a recording they made over a decade ago. Suddenly your political prospects start looking dim. For that matter, good luck keeping your job if you end up on the wrong side of a cancel mob and someone decides to leak your records to the public. None of these prospects are ridiculous to contemplate, and while I believe many people will fall through the cracks, this means of monitoring people and their online activity may also be eventually wielded by the government instead of just multinational corporations. Working through corporations first and getting consumers to casually accept the terms of service as a facet is just a means of slowly boiling the frog. In conclusion, the only advice I have for you, my friends, is to protect yourself. Build a wall. Learn how to gain proprietary control of your communication methods so that you and your friends can interact with each other without fear of the woke mob coming to ruin you socially and professionally, never mind just blowing up hundreds of dollars in your license purchases. As always, practice good internet hygiene in all your gaming endeavors. Anyway, I bid thee good luck, and fare thee well, my friends. Thus, I return to chewing the cud, as I am ought, for I am but a bovine.